I want to talk about the UAW strike, do a little follow-up segment. The UAW union may expand its strike again. This came out last night. So, of course, they have gone with the rolling sort of stand-up strike strategy. The United Auto Workers Union is preparing to announce a possible expansion of its strike on top of the first expansion. So they already expanded it once against GM, Stellantis, and maybe Ford on Friday, meaning today, if there isn't more progress in talks. A union source familiar with plans said Wednesday. So this would actually go into effect right after our show ends, because they would begin striking at noon. They're going to announce a possible expansion of the strike at 10 a.m. today. So that's in 25 minutes at the time of this recording here. The union went on strike against the big three automakers on September 15th, the first time it ever struck all three automakers at the same time. But obviously, as we know, it struck only one assembly plant for each company, and less than 10% of the workforce actually went on strike. So this announcement comes after President Joe Biden became the first sitting president to visit a picket line in support of strikers. So let's take a look at Joe Biden's visit, just a brief excerpt, and then we'll take a look at Trump's visit as well, and then we'll talk about the goings-on here.
The UAW picket lines when I was a senator since 1973, but I tell you what, first time I've ever done it as a president. Folks, look, one thing is real simple, I'm going to be very brief.
The volume is low. It'll increase.
You guys, the UAW, you saved the automobile industry back in 2008 and before. Made a lot of sacrifices. Gave up a lot. And the companies were in trouble. But now they're doing incredibly well. And guess what? You should be doing incredibly well too. The simple proposition. Stick with it, because you deserve the significant raise you need and other benefits.
Let's get it!
All right, now here's Donald Trump visiting a non-union shop in Clinton Township, Michigan. He came right after Joe Biden visited the picket line.
I side with the auto workers of America and with those who want to make America great again, and I always will. And I don't get one thing. I don't get why Ford and GM, why these car makers aren't fighting to make cars that are going to sell, to make cars that are going to be able to go on long distances. They immediately give up. I see it with the oil companies, too. They're promoting windmills, which don't work, by the way, but they don't work. They want windmills all over the place. It's like they're told what to do, and that's what they go against their industry. They're either stupid or they're gutless.
Yeah, he's got a hard-on for windmills, too. He's been really on that recently. Here's Dr. Cornell West. This was in Tappan, New York, but he also did appear in Michigan as well.
I want to say how blessed and honored I am to stand with my brothers and sisters of all colors here at UAW, because it's all about fighting corporate greed, it's all about defending human dignity, and it's all about affirming solidarity, because without solidarity, we'll be unable to meet the challenge of those at the top. That we want to make sure we don't divide the workers. We want to make sure the workers are always coming together, laughing together, loving together, struggling together. Sometimes you want to cry together. That's all right. Just stay together.
All right. So we've had an email exchange with a guy named Jacob, who's been on a couple different shows now, singling out both DueDissidence and RBN a bit for talking down the strike, as he put it, because we were very skeptical of this stand-up strike strategy. We thought, why not maximize leverage? Why not maximize impact by striking all at once? I got an email from Jacob, and he said, I'd like to come on your show to talk about this with you, to, correct some of. Well, what's that?
I want to be there. That'd be fun.
Well, that's why I think maybe we can convene a panel of sorts, and maybe we could all do this, because I would actually like to talk to Jacob, because in the email he sent us, he said that we were broadcasting factual inaccuracies about the strike. And so I said, yeah, I'd be happy to talk to you, but what factual inaccuracies are you talking about? Because, that's the kind of stuff I take very seriously. Like, we have a very heterodox show. Half our audience disagrees with half the shit we say. So, I don't care if you agree or not with me. That's not a big deal. But I would like to know if I'm putting out wrong information, because that's a whole different thing. And so he said, well, you're being factually inaccurate because Sean Fain never said they were all going to strike at once. I'm like, really? I said, you're gonna lawyer it like that? This is why people don't trust union leadership anymore, because of lawyerly shit like that. He said a couple months before, when they called the strike authorization vote, which I understand what that is, it's an authorization vote. He did not lay out specific plans for how the strike was going to go. However, it was very obvious when he announced this stand-up strike strategy less than 48 hours before the strike, the people on his chat were very surprised. And Jacob, another point he makes is that real life doesn't mirror online life. That's fair enough. But he was on a UAW stream, right? Like, the YouTube audience watching the UAW stream is not our audience, not a knock on our audience, but our audience, your audience. We're an online left audience. We're in this space. If you're watching a union stream, you are most likely a union worker with skin in the game. And on top of that, he admitted when he announced that stand-up thing that this was a new thing that we're doing. We're changing the way we strike. So obviously, it was fair to assume that when he said we're going on strike past September 14th, he meant we were all going on strike. Okay? And I still maintain that the way to put maximum pressure on the automakers is to make them unprofitable. We're saying that this slow drip is keeping them guessing, keeping them on their toes. They don't know which plants are going to go down next. Again, if you shut everything down, no cars get made until the auto workers get a good deal.
And there was a poll, Kean, there was a poll that showed that around 75% of American people supported the auto workers. So what is the argument for giving away that leverage and taking it easy on the unpopular CEOs and bosses of the auto industry? There is none. There's no reason to take your boot off the neck. Now, is there a possibility that their 3-day rolling strike can get workers some gains? Absolutely.
Exactly, yes.
The argument that I make is that they will get more if they had their boot completely on the neck and did a full strike. The establishment do not want a full strike. So then you will have the leverage, and you have public, you have the majority of the public on your side. You have public goodwill, and then you force the bosses to concede to demands that the public is already on your side for. Now, I understand if you want to do a 3-day rolling strike and you want to test the waters, if the populace is like 50-50, Keaton, because it makes sense. Like, all right, we got to make sure we uphold public perception. People don't want us, we don't want to be blamed for the economy being destroyed. But that is not the situation we're in. We got, right now, even Republicans, Keaton, are forced to give lip service to the auto union because that's how popular they are. When you have this amount of popularity, you use it. Right. So the social democrats and the union bosses right now is handicapping the movement. Even if they get a labor win, it's not as big as the labor win they could have got if they had a more revolutionary approach. And that's why a lot of social democrats, the people who are part of the union psyop, where the union bosses completely overwrite the will of the workers, because unlike the Vanguard and other people, I actually talk to workers. We talk to UAW people. We cover what the UAW workers was actually saying, and they went into full strike. So the union bosses decide we're not going to do a full strike. We're going to do a rolling strike. So whatever the union bosses say, social democrats and people who don't read theory like the Vanguard and others, they take that as gospel, Keaton. Right. Whatever the union bosses say is the position that the left must have.
Right, because they also feel like they need to have a champion. I think a lot of this is wanting to maintain faith in institutions, wanting to maintain faith in leaders. And Shawn Fain was saying all the right things into the run-up of this strike. And I want to reiterate, very importantly, that I still am rooting for Shawn Fain and the UAW to get the best deal that they can. As Nick said, they could very well end up with a good deal based on this. A stand-up strike is still better than no strike. I'm not saying this is not better than nothing. It is, and we're hoping that it works. What we're saying is that the more aggressive approach would have been better. And I want to address this. This is a Rumble rant. Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
It's not going to be long, but the question I want to ask for people who have critiques of my position, like a lot of these fake social democrats on Twitter, is why do you support the union bosses of UAW overriding the will of the workers who wanted to do an all-out strike? So there are people who was all for the all-out strike until the union bosses say, no, we're going to do the rolling strike. And now you got the people like the Vanguard who pretend that's a great strategy now.
Well, but what the guys like Jacob are trying to say is that they were never promised an all-out strike. And I'm saying that's bullshit. That's a lawyerly argument.
That doesn't matter because the rank and file wanted to do this. This is the difference between me, a communist, a Marxist-Leninist, and social democrats. Social democrats put they elevate the opinions of the union bosses. What I do is I represent and I fight for the opinions of the rank and file. That is what you see Shama Sawant and Worker Strike Back doing. So we support strikes no matter what. I want the 3-day rolling strike to be successful, right? But as a militant class warrior for the working class and for unions, and as someone who know what the most successful strategy is, I think we should have did what the rank and file wanted. So the people who have criticism of our strategy, why do you think the union bosses should be able to override the workers who want to do an all-out strike? I don't agree they should have that opinion. But anyway, and for the people who are surprised, and I see one people like, oh, you talk to work. Yeah, RBN is the only independent media channel that did an actual labor summit. What other channel talked to more labor activists than RBN? Not one. Not one. I posted a challenge and everyone is silent on that. No one has talked to more workers, more union members in the last year than RBN between our 2 labor summits that we had. Period. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to put this Rumble rant up on the screen. This is from Taddy Mason. Thank you for the donation and for the comment. But this is an important point that I want to give my response to. Yep. $825 million strike fund would last 145,000 employees 11 weeks at $500 a week. None of these companies can last that much of a fiscal quarter with nothing being done. Absolutely. They'd have to cave first. Yeah. So,
and that's the argument that the Vanguard was making with the strike funds. Oh, with the strike funds, guys. Remember, the movement is massively popular. And
but the goal is not to extend the strike. And that's Sean. The goal is never to extend the strike. The goal is not ever for a strike to go on forever. The goal is to maximize the power of the strike so that the strike is as short as possible. The idea is you hit the companies in the gut, knock the wind out of them, and force them to give you what you want. The goal is not to extend the strike. So the idea that, well, we have to extend the lifespan of our strike fund so that we can keep this going on more and more and more, that doesn't make any sense. According to Sean Fain himself, our goal is not to go on strike. That's what he said. So what is this thing? Well, the strike fund, we want it to last not 11 weeks. We want it to last a year. Why do you want to be on strike for a year? If you're on strike for a year, it means your workers are going without a good deal for a year. You want the strike to be short and strong. That's what Shama said when we had her on our show, because I messaged Shama after I did that initial segment, because I said, and Misty said in that first segment that we did, we couched it saying, look, we're not experts on this issue. Okay, we hope that Sean Fain knows something we don't. We hope the union knows something we don't. We hope we're wrong on this. And I said at the time, it's possibility I am wrong on this. We're pretty aggressive guys here on the show. We don't usually say we might be wrong. In that case, I did. And so I messaged Shama after the show off the record. I wasn't going to have her on. And I said, hey, what do you think about this? And then we started talking back and forth. And then she said, I'd like to come on and talk. I said, great, obviously. And then she came on and she basically agreed with our take. So anyway, I just wanted to clear that up because, the idea that us criticizing the strike means we're rooting for it to fail or that we don't want the stand-up strike to happen. That's not true. I would rather the stand-up strike than no strike. Obviously, we're hoping they get the best deal they possibly can. We're just saying, hey, you call the strike authorization vote, which passed 97-3, under the assumption, and that's the thing that has me a little pissed about this, because the idea that, well, we never said we were going to strike all at once, that's bullshit. That's a slippery lawyer argument. Sean Fain himself said when he announced the stand-up strike strategy 2 days before, he said, we're trying a new thing. He sprung it on them at the last minute. There's no getting around that, right? To try and talk around that is, I think, weaselly. But anyway, I do want to, and I will email Jacob back to see if maybe we can come on and have a panel about this and hash it out. I would love that.
And you guys see, I'm more than willing to talk about this because their position is incoherent as far as I'm concerned. Because you say you want to admit you're wrong or not. What they are upset with me, Ken, where few people are. These are people who are always butthurt about me just for whatever reason because I criticize social democrats, right? But they're upset because I am taking the position of the rank and file. So I would like to ask them, what is unreasonable about my position putting pressure on union leaders and bosses. And that is my reply while I roasted the Vanguard, where you guys take the position that union bosses are above criticism. Right. In our movement, if you want to be successful, there should be nonstop pressure and criticism of union bosses at all time. So what is the counter argument? What is the argument they're actually making me, Keaton? Shut up. Don't ever criticize the union leadership in the professional managerial class. That is incoherent. I don't want to take those people on any day, because there's a long history in the United States of the PMC class union leadership selling workers out. I was one of the only people who actually followed the Frito-Lay strike. You know, the Frito-Lay strike, union leadership actually undercut the ask of the workers because they didn't want to strike. There's so many examples of this. So these undisciplined social democrats who don't ever read theory, they immediately take the side of union bosses and leadership. When they do that, they undercut the voices of the workers. I am not here to undercut the voices of the worker. Right or wrong, I will always represent their position of the rank and file, and there's never an argument that say I should not do that. The Vanguard, they believe that the professional managerial class, union bosses, are above criticism because they are bootlickers of the professional managerial class. I am not. I represent the workers, and I am going to represent the position of the rank and file, period.
Yeah, I think there's a psychology at work here too, which is that a lot of people who, you know, are just sort of left-wing, sort of oriented thinkers, you know, people who don't have as much skin in the game, or people who, you know, don't follow these issues as closely as others, especially, you know, the remnants of the Bernie movements have been very disappointed by leaders over and over again. And I think when they see a leader that they invest in, they really sort of attach to them, you know, because they're desperate to admire someone, basically. You know, they're desperate to think, okay, this person is someone who we can follow. This person is someone who we can trust. And I think a lot of them saw that in Sean Fain. And when we started asking questions, they're like, wait a minute, why are you ruining this for us now? Like, why do you have to piss on this now? Because, you know, why are you tearing him down? And I said, my intention was not to tear him down. I hope they succeed. Like, I'm rooting for Sean Fain. I'm rooting for UAW, obviously. But when you see something that just doesn't make sense, and something that, as Nick said, goes against what the workers' expectations were and what they clearly were, you have to call that out, and you have to question that. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. The hysterical response that, oh, and, you know, some people said, I mean, this is the most laughable thing. They said they're rooting for it to fail so they can complain because complaining helps their YouTube channels. I'm like, listen. Auto worker strikes do not help YouTube channels. Like, if our first priority was to grow our YouTube channels, we would not be covering the UAW strike at all. We get far more clicks, views, and ad dollars by, you know, taking the piss out of the Vanguard. Like, that's what helps YouTube channels. Like, labor strikes are not money in the bank for grifting YouTubers. Like, that's just absurd. The idea that we would take a position because it helps our channel. Yeah, I want the strike to fail so I can make $11 on my clipped segment as opposed to $4 that I would make if I were supporting the strike because I'm less angry. Like, it's just insane.
Yeah, you see how they use civility politics to mute the voices of the workers and dissidents of the professional managerial class. Come on, man, we doing this fun action over here. Don't ruin our vibes.
Well, that's what it is. Yes, don't ruin our vibes. That's exactly it. Yep, go ahead.
The fact that we even had to add the caveat that, of course, we want to see the UAW strike succeed no matter what is bullshit. That is obvious. Why the fuck do we even have to say that?
Right.
The fact that we are have criticized what we believe is the best action for the workers, whether we are right or wrong, show that we want the best for them in the first place. The idea that if you don't get along to go along, that you're some sort of wrecker, how has this mindset benefit the workers thus far? I am a very scientifically minded person. If this strategy of civility politics for people to shut up when the professional managerial class make a mistake, if that actually got us wins, Keaton, if the strength of the American working class was strong because of the union bosses and PMC left, then maybe I would trust them more.
Right, exactly.
They want us to trust them blindly when they have not delivered results. And that's not the mindset of RBN, and that's why we make so many people uncomfortable. That's why so many people who follow these PMC leaders and social democrats, we ruin their brunch. We ruin their vibe when we tell them they're not as great as you think they are. And they're the reason why the left is not as strong as they should be in the United States. There's a reason why the left in the United States is considered a joke compared to the left in the global South, compared to communists in Eastern Asia. It's a joke. And even in Russia, the quote-unquote authoritarian capitalist state, they got paid maternity leave. Their worker rights is way stronger than ours because the American left working class discipline has been a joke for decades because they do stupid stuff like rolling strikes, and they try to be friendly with Democrats and politicians, invite them to their events, allow them to do campaign events at their actions, right? There's so many things the United States left gets wrong, and we look, and what RBN, what we do, and what people actually read theory, is we look at what actual successful revolutions have done, what actually successful movements has done. And the United States left moved completely counter to what actual communists and actual global South socialists who actually got gains for the working class has done. Social Democrats, as we know, is literally a CI formation in order to make a suitable left for the establishment. And union bosses and then unions were taken over by the capitalist class in the 80s and 90s to weaken them. So we know the capitalist class infiltrated unions, which anyone would know if you actually study history of left-wing movements. What that means, working class people at all times should be critical of these people, because a lot of these people who make $150,000 a year, $200,000 a year, they do not have our best interests in mind. A lot of people don't even know that, and they don't even know that a lot of union bosses, they're not even in our class. They make $200,000.
Oh yeah, no, of course.
So go ahead, Ken.
No, that's what Shama talks about all the time: business unionism. Absolutely.
Please clap.